Breakfast is my Achilles heel around here. Everybody wakes up at different times and has different requests, and today I'm going to share my answer to getting it all done, and also to the overpriced, preservative-heavy breakfast items that are out on the shelves as we load up our freezer with family favorites like bagels, blueberry muffins, and waffles. If you have a goal of saving money and time in the morning, this one's for you. This morning, starting our bagel dough was the first order of business. As you can see, my tiny assistant is still rocking her jammies and my hair is still in the process of drying as we started our project. The reason is that the bagels take 3 hours start to finish. The actual hands-on time, though, is quite minimal. That said, we needed to get started sooner than later. The dough, along with the majority of doughs, is actually super simple. It contains flour, yeast, water, salt, brown sugar, and that's it. To get started, we're simply weighing out the ingredients to combine, and then we will knead vigorously once we get it turned on here and everything into the mixer. Managing my little one can actually take a lot more effort than anything else going on, but what I've decided is that even the effort and the time put into slowing down and showing her what to do is well worth it in the end. She can do everything from cracking eggs to managing the mixer. She loves to help with mayo and several other things that we make around the house. So this will actually pay off in the long run when she can handle some of these tasks herself. Now, depending on how we're kneading, bagel dough takes anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes. If you're doing it by hand, of course, it's a longer time. If you're using a machine, it can speed up. It turns from a rough, shaggy dough, like you just saw, into a smooth and elastic dough when it's ready for the rest. Once finished, we moved it to an oiled bowl so it could rise in a warm spot. Now, it doesn't have to double like a bread dough would, but it does need to get puffy and get a little bit larger. The recipe says it takes anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half to complete this process. But one thing to remember is that the weather outside has a huge impact on how long something like this will take. It really does change based on humidity as well as temperature, so you want to keep your eye on it. I probably could have pulled mine and started the shaping process a little bit sooner, but we were busy in the other room working on some homeschool stuff. So we get to it when we get to it, and it looks great right here, ready to go in for the shaping process. Now, I did double the recipe, which I will link below, but I wanted to give you an idea for price comparison of how much this would actually save. Today, I've used an organic flour, organic sugar, made my own brown sugar from organic molasses. And so these bagels would be comparable to the Dave's Killer bread that you would get at Walmart or something similar. I made my plain bagels for 23 cents with all organic ingredients. That's each, of course. The Dave's Killer bread come in at $1.30 each, meaning it's an 82% savings if you're making a plain bagel. Now, of course, you can add in whatever you'd like for flavorings and seasonings, and that might increase it, a quarter per bagel if you went on the high end of what you wanted to add in. But the savings is still incredible when you make it from home. They're preservative-free and ready to go. Now, as you can see, when something like this is going on in my kitchen, my kids flock to the process. So you're going to see 4 of 5 in here with their hands on the dough shaping. Now, will this affect my final product? Of course. You don't have a 2-year-old shaping a bagel and have it come out perfect. But in the end, if she's learning the process and the kids are all involved and enjoying it, they're more likely to want to eat what we have made and what they put their hands on than something that I purchased at the store. So this really helps in getting their buy-in on switching away from some of the things that they might consider their favorite if they're going to be helping out in the process and making it at home. The first step in shaping our bagels was to divide one block of the dough evenly into 8. We went with a larger size, but you could really do whatever you want when you're making them at home yourself. So once that was done, we roll each of them into a ball, pinch everything under at the bottom, and really work toward a very smooth finished ball of dough. And then I just have them put one finger through the center, work it around and swing it around their finger until they get a little room before adding a second finger to roll that bagel in the process. Now, the first were plain, and the second are a family favorite around here, which is cinnamon sugar. Now, instead of using an actual fine cinnamon, today we're using cinnamon chips. The kids love the cinnamon chips. I personally would have liked them a little bit smaller, so next time I might cut them up even a little bit more, but the flavor was incredible. We also sprinkled the counter with raw sugar, so both ingredients were getting mixed into the dough at this point. Now, of course, whatever you want to put in the dough is a total personal preference. So one thing that we also love to do is an everything bagel. We love onion bagels, so anything that you want is free game at this point. After the bagels were shaped, it was time for our second rise. We allowed these to set for approximately 30 minutes to get a little bit puffy before we headed on over to the stove to move on to next steps. While the rise was in process, we went on over to the stove, got a large pan full of water, and added sugar and brown sugar per the recipe, which again is in the directions. You want it to come to a low boil and then place 4 bagels in at a time to slightly gently boil them 2 minutes on the first side and then 1 on the next. I do want to take just a second away from the recipe to share one tip with you that I've learned that not only helps me stock less, but helps me stay flexible in the realm of sugar. I only purchase regular organic sugar from Azure. With the one type, it's really simple to mix brown sugar as needed, or you can make a little in advance. But if you make it as needed, you never have any hard, old brown sugar. The only added ingredient that is necessary is molasses, which is highly shelf stable and lasts for years. And you really don't need very much at a time, so this is a really easy one just to keep in the pantry. For powdered sugar, you can also really easily make it with a good blender, and the only thing you need to add is a little bit of potato starch to prevent clumping. And I have to tell you, the first time I made it, I was quite amazed with how fine and beautiful it actually came out. Jumping back to the bagels, they bake at 425 for 20 to 25 minutes, just depending on how golden brown you would like them. I probably could have let these go just a few more minutes, but color being super dark isn't really a huge issue for us. And my kiddos had plans for the day. We were meeting a cousin at the pool, so we're fitting this in the cracks of our life to make sure that we can have something ready when we need it, when the time comes. So the bagels are sitting out on the cooling racks and will be there until after we get back, where they'll be bagged up and put in the freezer. Well, that is the ones that made it, of course, before the kids jumped on the opportunity to take one, cut it in half, and eat it to test out their newfound creation. As you can see in the end, they look a little bit rustic, but the kids really, really enjoyed them and they made a great add to the freezer. Now, our next plan is to whip up some blueberry muffins, and this will go way faster because of the preparation that we did in last week's video when we prepared our mixes. If you haven't seen that, I will make sure to link it at the end where you can see exactly what it took to put together the blueberry mix as well as the waffle mix that we'll use down the road. But that really speeds up any process when you already have all your dry ingredients put together and measured out. Really putting together the wet ingredients is the bulk of the time needed at this point to get them together. The wet ingredients needed include eggs, milk, and melted butter. Once that process is complete, the mix is poured into the bowl. I give it a good whisk to make sure everything is evenly divided or incorporated into the whole blend. And then I'm pouring in the blueberries. Just a few at a time. I'm using frozen blueberries, and getting them coated in the flour mixture is a great way to make sure that they don't all fall to the bottom of the pan and they're easily distributed throughout the batter. Now, once this is all mixed up, that's really all you have to do other than prepare your muffin tins. I like to use a parchment paper liner, but that is completely optional. If you don't want to use a liner at all, just grease the bottom of your muffin tins to make sure that the muffins don't stick. With the parchment liners, though, I find it easier for freezing because it can just fold over the top portion that you'll see sticking up here momentarily, and that helps to prevent them from sticking together once I put them inside the Ziploc. Another reason that I like it is because we can take them with us when we're on the go. I don't always eat something like this when we're at home, and being able to have it in some sort of a wrapper where we're not getting crumbs everywhere is a really good option when it's a bunch of little fingers that are going to be eating the muffins. Now, similarly to the bagels, when you're making your own muffin, you can customize the size. If you want a gigantic one, like you can get at Panera Bread, then just put more in the cup and bake it a little longer. If you want smaller ones or mini muffins to make it easy for little hands and fingers, definitely do that as well. I went pretty middle of the road with my size and wound up with 20 muffins. Now, of course, the pan has space for 24, but one thing that is really important is to not leave any of the cups empty when you're baking. So I did add water to the 2 remaining cups. I have one on the front corner and then one diagonal in the back on the opposite side to make sure that that water is spread out through the oven, which helps with the moisture. You also just saw me sprinkle the tops with sugar. That is a trick that we picked up from Panera, as those muffins are really, really good and they have a little crackle crust right on top that's actually sugar. This is completely optional. Do what works for your family, but we really enjoy it. Once the muffins are in the oven, it is the perfect time to tidy up. Sometimes I get busy with the kids, but when I have a minute to just go ahead and throw things instantly in the dishwasher, my kitchen time just tends to go a whole lot smoother. And on this gorgeous day, my kids were playing right outside the kitchen window, so I was able to take advantage of the time that I had and knock out the cleanup while the muffins were baking. Now, I did pull the muffins out a couple times and check on them to make sure that they were complete, inserting a toothpick until it came out clean. Once they were good to go, I pulled them out of the oven, set them over on the cooling rack, and let them cool completely before bagging them up and also getting them into the freezer. Now, of course, there were some casualties once the kids came in that didn't make it to the freezer, but they turned out really beautifully. I will make sure to link the cooling rack set that I have down below. It is really nice because the racks themselves actually stack on top of each other. There I have them side by side, but that was only because the liners for the muffins were actually a little bit taller than space would allow for them to cool properly. You'll see them later when I have the waffles stacked up, which I'm starting on now, and they really just do a great job of saving space and allowing everything to cool efficiently. In addition, they're oven safe, which means when I'm making something like chicken wings in the oven and I need all of that space for the number of kids that we're actually feeding, I can stack those racks and put 30, 40 wings on them at one time without having to worry about moving the space around or doing anything different to get them done all at the same time. Now, this is the waffle mix that we made last week. And I mentioned in that video that I made a mistake in writing the water content on the side of the jar. Here's what happened. I went to make those waffles, which was a half batch of what I normally make. And it wasn't until this point right here when I was stirring that I realized exactly how much liquid was in this bowl and that something was terribly wrong. I mean, it's completely soupy. This all set in and I realized exactly what had happened right at this point. And so the only valid step was to go back to double up all of the dry ingredients and to add in the extra eggs and oil needed to make it the regular size batch that I normally make for my family. So when you are making a mix, make sure to verify what you're writing down, because I really did not have the time to stand around and wait for the extra batch of waffles to complete, as this was a ball game night and we were waiting on my husband to get home to run out the door. Although it did work out, it crunched me a little bit on time, and had I done a little bit more preparation in the beginning or double checked myself, that wouldn't have been a problem. From this point, the process is actually really simple. I did make sure to dial in texture and color preferences on my waffle maker. Some of my kids like them a little bit fluffier and some of them like them a little bit darker and crunchier. So we have the ability to make that happen just depending on what settings we dial in on the waffle maker. Our normal setting on the waffle maker takes around 5 minutes to finish out a beautiful Belgian waffle. I did not fill them quite high enough during this run, so you'll see that the top of them isn't completely fluffy like the bottom is once I pull them out, but they still tasted amazing. And all you got to do is flip them over and the kids won't even notice that the bottom isn't as perfect as it normally is. This double batch recipe of waffle mix made 30 waffles. When you do the math on that, it takes around 40 minutes to complete the waffle processing time for all of those waffles, which is why I like to do this ahead and freeze them. I don't always have time, but when I can make up a big batch and get them in the oven, the kids can grab them at their convenience and they're ready to go. We just put them in the air fryer for 4 minutes on reheat and they turn out beautiful. Now, as you can see, these waffles sat out on my cooling rack the whole time we were gone at the ball game. When we got home, I got them all bagged up. For more information on the mixes that I mentioned before, make sure to check out this video and enjoy this playlist until my next upload. For now, it's 30 waffles, 22 muffins, and 16 bagels to the freezer.